this is about time. Okay. Yeah, great. So we are starting right away, and it's nice to meet you all. My name is Benjamin Ifinidu, and with me I have here Prosper. Okay, so Prosper Rawike is our co-host. So we'll be starting right away. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Okay, Prosper, could you let me confirm if my screen is showing? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, your screen is showing.
Okay, is it on full screen? It's on full screen, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, great. Okay, so we are welcome to our second class in this Node.js intermediate class. This is sponsored by KodeCamp. Okay, so this is brought to you by KodeCamp, and KodeCamp has a drive towards building the skill economy. So this training, as much as it's a show of the interest in trying to develop, young talents to be market ready. So the aim or the purpose is to be sure that at the end of this program, you're a full-fledged developer able to take on real life jobs. Okay, so we'll be going into today. Last week, we looked at the introduction to Node.js, and while we looked at what Node.js is, one of the things we saw as the critical or the core of Node.js performance was the event loop. And in describing the event loop, we looked at quite a whole lot of things. So if you missed last week's class, I would advise that you go to our YouTube handle. So just go to our YouTube handle on KodeCamp. Just type in KodeCamp and with a K, okay? And you should be able to see our Node.js intermediate class, the first class we had on our YouTube handle. So please, if you missed last week's class, please go back to the video, watch it, digest it, and let's go into today's business. So my name is Benjamin Ifinidu. I'm a software developer. I am experienced with the main stack and the .NET full stack. So basically, I'm a full stack developer, and on Slack, you can see me as Airsoft on Slack. So in case there's any time you need to reach out to me or anything, you can just tag me on Slack and I'll see your message. I'm not alone on this. I also have here my colleague. He's also going to be available. So he is on Prosper Rawike, and he's a backend developer. He's well experienced with Node.js, MongoDB, Express.js, and TypeScript. And you can also reach out to him on prosper.js, okay, on Slack handle. So you can just add him, send him a message, and we'll be quick to reply as soon as we are available, okay? So let's go into the business of today. So today we'll be looking at introduction to REST, Express.js, and Postman. And I'm aware that this is an intermediate class, okay? So for you to be here, it means you have some little bit of experience with Node.js. You're able to pass, the test we gave you. So you being here means at least you have some of this experience. However, I'd like to always touch the fundamentals. So as a programmer, you should know what it is, what it's all about. Why does it work? So it's not a case of if it's working, don't touch it. That kind of pattern that people see. Once it's working, don't touch it. The thing is, we want to get stuff to work, and we want to be able to say, okay, this is why it is working. And at every point in time, if you notice such is not working, then you know what went wrong, you know why, and you'll be able to design your architecture on your own. So it's not that you need to fetch this from here and there. I'm not saying that's not going to happen, but at least you understand it better. So all right, so let's go straight into the business of today. So I'll be starting first with talking about what is backend development. So what is backend development? Now, backend development is also known as server-side development, and this handles the part that users don't see or interact with. Last week we looked at two sides to development. Okay, we saw the client side and we saw the server side. So on the client side, we're talking about applications like browsers, things that the users can interact with through their browsers, their mobile apps and such, and we refer to those as the client side. And then we saw we had the server side. Okay, so the server side deals with things that the user doesn't see or interact with. On the client side, you're talking about the user interface. If there's a button, a click, a message, something you can scroll through, all those different aspects are things that you will look at as the client side. But on the back end, you're looking at the functionalities. You're looking at things that, handle logics or the behind the scene functionalities of the web application. So it focuses primarily on databases, backend logic, APIs, and servers. Okay, so when we are talking about backend, you're going to have all the things we'll be talking about related to this, areas: database, backend logic, APIs, and servers. So what is an API? Now, basically, an API is the core aspect of a backend developer's work. You're basically developing an API. Okay, so you're basically creating or writing or programming an API. So an API is an application programming interface. That's what the acronym means. And it is a program, okay, or you can call it a code or a code base. It is a program, a set of instructions or functions that allows applications to access data and interact with external software components, operating systems, or microservices. Okay, so when we say external software components, we're talking about like you can interact with another software using an API. You could interact with the operating system, which could be that of the device that is on, if it's on a Windows, a Mac, or a mobile device. And the microservices are basically like other aspects of the API. So an API can interact with another that way. So what I have here is an analogy. Okay, what I have here is an analogy. But before I do that, to put it simply, okay, an API delivers a user's request to a system and sends the system's response back to the user. So basically, the API acts as an intermediary, okay? So between the user and then the system or the server or the database, it acts as the intermediary. So you can think of it as a waiter in a restaurant. So when you go to a restaurant, you as the customer now, you have certain requests that you want to make. So you want to send a request to the restaurant. This is what I want to eat. You want to place your orders. For example, you go to maybe Domino's Pizza and you go to place your order at the counter. Now, while you are placing your order, there is someone there who is receiving the order. Now, you don't need to see what is going on in the kitchen. You don't need to ask. You don't need to be in the kitchen to see what food is being made, what food is ready, and everything. You can ask or you can query that information from that intermediary, which is the waiter or probably the person at the counter, since we're talking about Domino's Pizza here. Okay, so from here, you should be able to see what are the things that are available. Okay, so that you see in the menu. So this is given to you. You see here what are the things that are available. And then you can decide to say, okay, yes, I want to pick one. This is my order. You don't go to the kitchen to get that. The API gets that for you and returns to you a response. So here you have the customer, you now sending a request. The API now, the intermediary picks the request. And this request, you could actually use it like, okay, one of the requests could be, I want to see what you have. So ideally, that would be your get request. You want to see all the things that are available. And then, okay, you can decide to say, okay, I want to get individual. So that could be your request. So I want to see all the things that you have. The kitchen could tell that, okay, all these things that we have today we are making this, or these are the things available. It's basically acting as the intermediary. So you could also have an API working now. In this case here, in some cases, we look at it as a client trying to reach out to maybe a site, and the API is giving results you could not only look at it from that perspective, you could also look at it as a developer now, this time around, wanting to fetch the information now. So I'll show you an example of this when we go further, okay? I'll show you an example of this when we go further. So you can, a developer can also try to reach out to an API to get the information available and use it in building another different application. So as we go further, we'll look into this aspect. And let's look at some of the uses of web APIs, okay? So an API serves as the link among technologies, okay? It could be different technologies, the user, and the enterprise or business. Now, APIs are utility for businesses for 7 broad purposes, okay? So there are so many purposes, but we could categorize them into 7 broad purposes. So one of them would be access, okay, to access an application's data and logic and monetization potential of collected data. So you can access information, okay, using an API. Take, for example, a banking application. A banking application, you have your regular, payment gateway and all the information that you can get from such. And let's say you're a customer now and you have an app. When you log in and your details are provided, you realize that you're able to see certain information like, your current balance and all those informations and everything. So those are things that you can access. Now, you can also access an application's functionality. So functionalities could be in so many different ways. It could be that you want to, upload a file, you want to access maybe a transaction to transact between this or that, withdrawals and everything. So your API grants you access to the application's functionality. Okay, so you can get that from the API. Now, one of the things I want to say is basically a front-end application cannot quite do much without a back-end application. The 2 of them are needed. Okay, so don't have this feeling I'm saying front-end is not as needed as back-end. Both of them are mutually dependent on each other. However, the front end cannot work without the back end, and the back end looks like too much of bogus jargons to somebody. A user will not be interested in seeing JSON or codes and different stuff. So generally, the API provides functionality. Okay, it provides functionality as we'll see in the course of this program. It also serves as a medium of communication between microservices. I'm going to touch a little bit on microservices today, and much later I will also touch on it. Then we have, connecting ecosystems. So this is what I was trying to say before. When I said connecting ecosystems, we have consumer to business. Okay, consumer to business, which is one of those examples, and we have business to business. So an example of a consumer to business is like an individual, for example, trying to use a bank app. So the individual is the customer, you call it the consumer here, and the bank is the business. Now, you also have cases where a business sets its own code using another business API. So you call that like a third-party API. So for example, you have like Paystack now as a channel. Paystack has a payment gateway, and their payment gateway, allows for you to be able to connect to so many different payment options, MasterCard and everything. So in other words, they are using, their own gateway to connect to other, different payment platforms like MasterCard and such. Then you could decide to come up with a fintech, API that consumes, Paystack's API to be able to use what they provide through their gateway. So you can see now that there's a business-to-business connection. So apart from you designing as just, designing for just customer use, you could also design of ways that it can be used. Even Netflix does, it makes the API available for others to use. Google Maps also use, and not that they're just making it open. You could also have them open for, like making returns. They make returns through that. Now, another thing we could consider here is power integration. So here you're integrating like, for example, let me try to see if I could explain it in this concept. Let me get my spotlight. Okay. Example, let's say one API does something, and what it does is not necessarily all you need from that API. So you have another API that does something else, and then you decide to build an API that takes the two of them together, or you decide to build maybe an application that takes the two of them together, integrates what the two of them can do together into one lump, and then you have like a powerful integration that has integrated the benefits of one and that of the other together to form. You can have. Then you also have new features for your business, and then you have open new paths for innovation and growth. So APIs has like so much of benefits and uses. So let's go forward. So one of the things that I would say here is a lot of times people jump straight into code, okay? A lot of times people jump straight into coding, and when you code like that, you basically are just, you're not taking time to design, you're not taking time to look at the trade-off, what could make your API better, and there are many things you need to look into before you go straight into code. So in some cases, people who do that may just end up just repeating codes. They might just end up picking code from here, and maybe like they fetch a code base. This looks like it's going to work for what I want to do, pick it and just paste and okay, that's not an ideal way. An ideal way is you want to take time to internalize what are the problems. Okay, so the problem statement, what you want to come up with, okay, what process or what architecture is going to make the work efficient. So we're going to be looking into the API architecture. So API architecture is the process of defining the methodology and processes for developing and running the API, okay? So it's the process of defining the methodology. What methodology are we going to use? And what processes are we going to use in developing and running this API? Now, an API architecture consists of a set of components, okay? And a description of their logic interaction. So it basically refers to the process of developing a software interface that exposes the backend data and application functionality for use in new applications. So generally, there are so many different architecture. Well, I will be pointing out this 5, okay, because these 5 are the top, okay, the top word API architecture. So the first we have is called the RPC, which is the remote procedure call. Now, the remote procedure call is very old, okay? It's very old, and it's been, the remote procedure call is very old, and it has been on for like decades, okay? So it's been on for decades, like 30 years, 20 to 30 years. And basically, it's simple in the sense, what it does is it's more like a system now is trying to make a call to a remote server that will perform a procedure. So you're trying to make an API call to a remote server, and when the call goes, it performs a procedure. So this was a time of a procedural approach to object or to programming generally. Okay, so the RPC is the remote procedure call, and from there it had certain limitations which Microsoft considered, and they realized when they were developing certain things dealing with XML, they had to envelope it. So that brought about their own, which is the simple object access protocol, and it's basically more of a protocol that was brought up in in a way to try to solve some of the limitations that they had dealing with XML files in RPC. And then there we have REST. Okay, so REST came up as a trade-off between RPC and SOAP together, and that's REST coming in. And then we have gRPC. Now, gRPC was developed recently by Google, and the reason why I'm actually like trying to mention a number of these things is because recently, okay, in recent times, in some of the jobs that you would look at and see, you will see some of them specifically defining some of the things they want to see. Okay, so you might see some jobs saying, okay, we want a backend developer who is experienced with gRPC, and then you might see some who will be specific to REST. But REST generally is how most software architectures have been defined in the last couple of years. Okay, while gRPC is gradually taking mainframe, and it's usually for really massive projects. Okay, because of the trade-off in cost and in cost implications in designing and actualizing it. So you also have GraphQL, which is relatively new. And what GraphQL tries to do is, I think I would explain this GraphQL much later because we're going to be having it towards the ending of this program. It's quite very nice. So generally, the trade-off for GraphQL is when you understand REST and how the information in REST is being rendered or the response is being given, then you'll be able to see the benefits of GraphQL. So that's the reason why I don't want to go deep into it as of today. But basically, let's look at what we've been learning for the core aspect of this program. So we'll be learning more about REST, and to look into it, let's first of all start by understanding like why do we have to choose between the different architectures. Okay, so when designing a value-intensive API for your business model, the following crucial considerations should inform API design decisions in your enterprise. So one of the things you want to look at is aligning your API design with your business goals. Someone comes, for instance, now to you with, for example, space. You need to understand that the way you will approach it is not the same way you're going to approach, an application that is basically doing just regular CRUD processes, dealing with maybe a website, for example. Okay, so if you're designing a website and you have maybe like a blog or such similar CRUD processes, the approach or the design is going to be different from if you're dealing with fintech. You want to consider so many other things, as we will see in practical terms. And then you want to look at the availability and management of business resources. You want to look at the use cases supported by your API. So what are the use cases supported by your API? So for very massive applications that deal with a whole lot of information and so much of subsets, you're looking at gRPCs like Netflix uses gRPCs, Google uses gRPCs. In fact, we came up with it as a solution, for the needs that they had, and they switched over from REST to gRPC. So basically, all of this is based on the need. Then looking at the target audience, then value creation and all of this as we see here. So there is a need to consider what it is you're doing, and you can use these considerations in getting your best fit. Now, REST is what we're going to be primarily focusing on for the course of this program, and I would explain why. Now, REST is the short for representational state transfer, and is an architectural style for building web services that interact via an HTTP protocol. Now, its principles were formulated in 2000 by computer scientist Roy Fielding, and it gained popularity as a scalable and flexible alternative to other methods of machine-to-machine communication like RPC and SOAP. Okay, so those are more of machine-to-machine communications. Now, REST, on the other hand, has gained widespread use. So majority of applications or use cases that you find for web APIs often border around REST. So that's the reason why we are going to be teaching REST fundamentally for this program, and later on we'll introduce GraphQL. Now, what are the 6 guiding principles of REST? Now, one of them is called uniform interface. And when we say uniform interface, what we are talking about is we are saying that every of the endpoints, every of the models of how you model your functions and solutions should be unique, and the results or the way you provide them should be unique and have like a definable pattern. Okay, so for instance, and apart from it being definable, it's understandable to a developer. So for example, if you have an endpoint and your endpoint, maybe you're talking about product items, okay? Now your endpoint should not be something like prod. Your endpoint should not be something like prod 234. Your endpoint should be product. So this aspects have like a clearly defined principle, okay? A clearly defined principle of how it should be. So if you follow these guiding principles, your results will will conform to a standard that is acceptable internationally. Okay, so that's the reason why I'm bringing it up here. Now, the next is client to server. Okay, so when we talk about client to server principle, what we are saying here is the client should be clearly separated from the server. And when I mean client, I'm talking about client side application now. Okay. Now the client side application should be clearly separated from the server side application. So you will call those concerns. So the client concerns should be clearly differentiated and separated from the server concerns. Now this allows for the development of the client to be somewhat independent. Okay, so the client side is developed independently, and then the server side is developed independently. So the two of them are independent of each other, and that's how it should be. So you can have the first set of developers or teams working on that, and they are clearly separated. The next is stateless. Now, when we talk about stateless, what we are trying to say or refer to in describing stateless is that when you are sending a request, the request should be considered as a completely new request that does not have any of the previous information. Now, remember, when you're clicking a link, you are trying to maybe like move to a different link or something. That is basically a request. Now, that request you are sending should be completely unique in the sense that, okay, it does not necessarily contain the information of the previous request. Each request that comes is on its own. It does not have the state. It does not have the information. So if, for example, in the last request, I made an order or I sent an information or a document, this new request that I want to make does not know anything about it. So every request as such should provide the necessary information or resource that is needed to complete that request. Okay, so since it is stateless, every request now should provide all the needed resource, okay, that is needed to complete that request. So if, for example, you're trying to log into a site and what you need now is probably the username and the password, if in the previous request, you had your username typed in. This new request you want to make does not know. You need to provide all the fields that are available, and that's one part to look at. Then we have catchable. So in catchable, what we are saying here is the API should be able to tell the client when you are sending a resource that the client can put in the catch. Okay, so if that resource is catchable, you should send it clearly. The client should be able to know, yes, this is something you should put in the catch. It should be cached, and at every point, it can then be added to whatever further request you are sending. So that's catchable. Then here, layered system, you're saying that one layer of information or resource should not know what the other layer is about. So if you have so you're separating all the different layers, all the different aspects into consent. These principles, I would show them in practical as we go on. Then here we have code on demand, and basically it's optional. It's just saying that the client should be able to, if the client needs to make a request for certain codes to perform some operations, that your API should be able to provide this, but this is optional. You can visit this site to get more details on the guiding principles and thoroughly revise them. Okay, so going forward, we will be looking at the REST API in depth. So the REST API, or REST generally, or you could say RESTful APIs. Now it uses resource identifiers to identify each resource involved in the interactions between the client and the server components. Okay, so it uses resource identifiers to identify each resource involved in the interactions between the client and the servers. And the resource can be anything. Okay, it can be it could be names, it could be a document, it could be an image, it could be a collection, it could be for instance, certain parts of things like text and all information you're supposed to send. Okay, so it could be a non-virtual object of such. Now, a resource method is the type of request you send to the server, and you basically have 4 of them. So you have the get request, you have the put request, post, and the delete request. Now, the post method allows you to it allows for the server to find data that you requested and send it back to you. So the get method, rather, please. The get method allows the server to find. So you'll be familiar with this with when you try to access information on the site. I'm going to show this to you soon. Okay, I'm going to show this to you. Then we have the put method. So this put method, if you perform the put request, then the server in the database. Now, I've seen people in a number of this, and the thing is, yes, if you use a put or a post request or even a get request, all of this will work. However, that's not the pattern. So the rest tells you this is the way it should be done. Okay, so I'm going to display that when we get to Postman, and then the post request permits you to create a new entry, and then the delete allows the server to delete an entry from a database. So basically, all of these are things that you are the one who specifies them. However, this is the standard. This is the way it should be done. And if you do it other way, you're not conforming to the standard of what the REST API is. Okay, so here we'll be looking or working today with Express. And the Express is just a minimal and flexible Node web application, okay, framework that provides a robust set of features for web. And we're working with Postman, and it helps basically for us to test our API. So it's a testing platform. It helps with testing our APIs and helps us in building code faster. So instead of you having to spend so much time developing a front-end application for what you want to do, Postman already has this things set up and running. So it's easy for you to use Postman to serve as as though you have your front-end set up. So that's that, and let's get straight into business. for today. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing VS Code, and before that, I have resources available. Okay, I have resources available for you to get. So I'm going to make this link available. Last week I shared a Google Drive folder, and like I said, the Google Drive folder, the link I'm going to post it here. And for those who will be connecting through YouTube, I'm also going to post the link, so you'll be able to see that. So the link will be updated after this period. So here, okay, I think I posted it. Let me make it available to everyone. All right, so here's the Google Drive, and from there you'll be able to see. If you click on it, it should lead you to a folder that has the materials that I'm going to be using for today's classes. Okay, for today's class. So let me go to VS Code. Okay, so I think we can share my screen. All right, perfect. All right, so we'll be continuing today, and I'll start by saying that Node.js has Node.js has. I want to share the browser. Okay. Okay, let me share the browser. Okay. All right. So yes. So here we are. So last week I showed you Node.js.org, and I said Node.js has a documentation. So documentation basically gives you details of what your code base can do, and it's always best to go through the documentations for what you want to do. So open source codes, okay, open source codes basically give you documentations and show you this is what you need to do to be able to work with it. So for Node.js, if you go to nodejs.org, you'll be able to see different different of the Node.js functions that are available. So you have the built-in libraries, and these are thoroughly explained to you. Another place you can go to, okay, for you to get information. Yes, I know you all will be familiar with Stack Overflow, but apart from that, you can also go to W3 Schools. I'm going to show you W3 Schools. Okay, so in W3 Schools, here in W3 Schools, you can actually search, and they have free and they also have paid courses. Okay, so here you have Node, and it opens you to the basic things that you can find on Node itself. Okay, on Node itself. So here you have Node. Here you'll be able to see basic HTTP module that comes with Node. Then here we have the HTTP module that comes with Node. We also have the file system, and the file system shows you that you can read files, create files, update, delete, and rename files if you so choose. Okay, so here you just have a basic example. Then you have the URL module. It shows you npm events and basic way of uploading files. Okay, so you'll be able to see that here with from W3 Schools. Then I also mentioned that you should go to npm.js if you're working with packages. Okay, so one of the packages we're going to be starting with today is Express. So I introduced us to Express last week, and I'm going to go over it again. So Express, when you go to npm.js.org and you search npm.js.org, you see Express here, and the way to install it is just npm install Express. So last week I showed how to install Express, and this is just basic boilerplate code that you can start with to run your Express application. So with that, I'm going to go to VS Code. Okay, so VS Code is my choice IDE for working with Node. Okay, so here I have a basic setup. You'll find all these files in what I sent to you on Google Drive. So yeah, I have a basic setup here of HTTP module, and what you have here is this is a built-in. Let me comment this out. Okay, so let me just comment this out now. Now this is a built-in module. It comes with the Node.js library. Okay, so Node.js JavaScript library contains the HTTP module, and there are certain modules that come. Okay, so if you notice here, I don't have any package JSON file here. Okay, so I don't have any package JSON file here. So all I'm trying to just say in essence is this here is directly from Node library. Okay, so let me comment this out here. So we're going to run this today just to test. Okay, we're going to run this today just to test our HTTP module. Show you a simple return you get. So I want to be sure I'm in the right library. So I'm going to cd into let me see. Okay, I'm in code space. So I want to cd into week 1, and let me see if I can reach hello. Okay, yes, I can reach hello.js from here. All right, so sorry. Oh, okay, I was cding into a file. Okay, so yeah, so I'm in week 1, and I want to run this file. Okay, so I'm going to run node hello.js, and if I do this, it shows that the server is running at HTTP this. Okay, so this here is the host name and this is port. And if I was to go to my browser, I think I would just share my whole screen. I'm tired of breaking this down. So let me just share my whole screen. Okay. All right. So if I go to the browser and I go to the port, that's let me go to the port 43. Okay. So localhost. Mind you, this port number 127 and all this is basically your local host. Okay, so this is basically your local host. Okay, so going here to the browser, you see here that it renders hello world to the screen. Okay, so this basically does the right. Okay, so one of the things we look at here is we have here the HTTP module, and this HTTP module has a function inside it. So what we are doing here is we're calling this function, and this function has all of this here. Okay, the request, it takes in this aspect. So I'm going to be breaking down some of these things when we get to object-oriented programming next week. Okay, so we're going to be breaking this concept out for those, just in case you're not familiar with this. I'm going to be breaking this down out. So here we have here what we call parameters. So this basically is a function, and this is an ES6 syntax. So here it's taking in two parameters in this function, and with these parameters, it is accessing some things we see here. So what I want to do is I want to what I want to do is I want to show you this aspect here. So here we have the status code 200, which is available and written here and shown here and everything. So this here gives you what we want on the screen, and I want to show you now using Express. Now I'm going to stop this, and I'd like to show you that Express is not going to run here because of a certain reason. This is Hello World. Okay, so Hello World JS. Now, one of the things that okay, come on, please. Okay, so let me try to run this here and show you something. Okay. Now, one of the things that you see here is you have certain modules that you need to install for you to do some applications. So one of them is, one of the first things you always want to do is you want to say, okay, you will do your package.json, like npm init to get your package.json file. So I'm going to run npm init -y, and when I do this, you'll see your package JSON file, and then I want to run npm. Okay, so I want to install Express. Okay, so I want to run npm install Express, and if I do this, you see here in the package.json file that Express becomes one of the dependencies. Okay, so we have Express here as one of the dependencies here, and as such, we can import this. Okay, so we can import this in this application here, so this becomes available. And then in Express, one of the things you want to say here is, okay, this file now, what is the main file that you are reaching out to? So what is the main file that you're going to be reaching out to when you do npm run? So we have what we call scripts that we use. So for now, I'm just going to initialize, I'm just going to use an index.js here. So this setup here is when you want to like work on a project, okay? When you want to work on a project and you want to use your normal start script. So here, I'm going to go through the package.json, and here I'm reaching this npm JS. So I just want to console, I just want to use the console.log for now, just to say hello from index. And I want to show you a package that we are going to be using for the purpose of the training. Okay, so I have hello from index. Okay, hello from index here. So when we use Node, okay, when we use Node, I'm going to use just normal Node run index.js. When we use Node, sorry, please. Okay, let me find Node. So let me bring this up. Okay, okay. I mean, this is back in workspace. Okay, this is back in workspace. So I need to cd back into the. Okay, so when we use Node, okay, Node index.js now, this here is showing hello from the index here. And you notice that after running this application, it stops, okay? So Node, if I do that again, Node index.js, after running this application, it stops and the terminal is then again free. So there's one application that we usually use to be able to continue running the process. So if you make changes, like for instance, now if I make another change, like console.log or okay, hello again. So if I say hello again, you will notice that this doesn't work or doesn't run. I have to run the application again, and before it sees the changes. So one of the packages we're going to be using here, going back to npm.js, is called Nodemon. Okay, so today I'm introducing to Nodemon because we're going to use it a lot. Maybe not today, but we're going to use it a lot. So I'm going to go to npm.js, and here you can just type Nodemon. Okay, you can just type Nodemon to see. Okay, so here, so this is to see some of the things Nodemon can do here in the documentation. But what you want to do when using Nodemon is you can use Nodemon install -g Nodemon. And if you do this, in case you are using Yarn, you can also use Yarn in case you use Yarn. Yarn is also like an alternative to using npm. Okay, now, if you do npm install -g Nodemon, this G here, this flag here, means global, meaning that Nodemon will be installed globally, and at every point in time, you can call Nodemon without having to install it on that specific application. Okay, then here you can decide to do someone's mic is unmuted. Okay, you can decide to do you can decide to do npm install -d. Okay, so I'm going to be showing you the one where we use -d, and the purpose of that is you want it to be on that on that package.json file. So for the purpose of this, if you notice here, my package.json file is outside. It is here on the workspace. It is here on the code space, not in the week one. So one of the things I keep on saying is you always need to be sure of your directory, okay? You always need to be sure of your directory. So if I want to work in week one, this is going to be my main file, for instance. I want to be in this in the directory of week one. But if I want to work here, like I'm in this place, then I want to be in the right directory. Either you do that or you change the access file here, the main file that you want. Okay, so this could be some of the main challenges that some of you may face. So that's why I'm taking my time to break it down. So let's go straight into, I need to move back. Okay, so I want to move back into this previous CD. So you can do that using cd dash dot dot back. Okay, so I'm moving out into code space where I have my package.json file. If you want to check your files, you can do ls. So ls, if you're using Windows, it will show you the files you have available, so you know you're in the right directory. Okay, so here I want to install. Hello?
Can you hear me, Ben?
Yeah, I can hear you, please.
Yeah, someone has a question. Sorry to interrupt. Well.
Oh, okay. I have a question. Okay, so let me check the question, but please, okay. The question, you could drop it in the chat. Okay, so if it's something that is going to be explained immediately, I'll be able to look into it. Okay, so please, if you have a question at this point, from time to time, I'll take a pause to ask for those who have questions. Okay, but if you have a question that is related to the exact thing we are talking at the moment, you can drop it in now. Okay. All right. So while we're expecting the question, like as I was saying, we have npm install, and there are different flags. So one of the flags is -g, which is global. So when you use -g, anything you install is going to be globally installed on your system. It's not going to be limited to this particular file or directory you're on. Okay, so you don't want to do npm install -g for just any application, because you're not going to use it. Some applications are, some packages rather, are specific, okay, to what you want to use it for. Then the -g flag is for dev dependencies. Okay, so dev dependencies, let me first install it, then I'll show you or explain what dev dependencies are. Okay, so npm install node module as a dev dependency. Okay, so while that is installing, okay, so while that's installing, if you have a question, you can drop the question in the chat box. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted him to speak because of YouTube, right?
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Let me just explain this, and we'll get to that. So here, I have what is called here dependencies here, and I have what is called on this other side dev dependencies. So I want to, at this point, differentiate between the two of them. Okay. Now, when you have dev dependency, you have basically like a development phase of your project you work on, and you have a production phase of the project you work on. So a development phase is, for example, if I'm building an app, this time, this is that development phase. So that is a time that there are certain packages or dependencies, as you call them, that you will use, but will not be used in the live application. The live application, you don't use Nodemon in your live application. Your live application basically uses Node to initiate, the project. However, dependencies like Express and others we will be seeing, we use them in the production application. So for these two now, some of them you use as dev dependencies. So when you are installing them, you do npm, okay, your npm, your install, and then the -d, okay, as whatever for those that will be dev dependencies. Then if it's a main dependency, for instance, Express, you just go straight to that. So I just want to clarify that. Okay, so let's take your question, Solomon. Let's take a question before I go any further. Solomon, you can ask your question openly.
Hello, good evening. Good evening. Aerosoft. Good evening,
Yeah,
everybody.
good evening. So thank
Sorry,
you very much.
I already dropped the question in the chat. But
No
meanwhile, I
problem.
can
You
still
can read it out.
okay. I can still
Yeah.
say it. Okay. It's concerning the keyword you're going to be using in this training.
Okay.
I discovered we started with the ECMAScript 5 that uses const
Okay.
express equals something else. But I later discovered that there is this newest version of ECMAScript that uses import keyword. So which one? I just want to ask which one is advisable. Yeah, which one is advisable, because I guess the import is a bit easier. Or me actually, so that's why I'm asking which one do you recommend for us? Thank you.
Okay. Are you familiar? Are you used to working with? Are you used to working with React? Let me ask that. Let me start with that. Do you work with React or?
No, I don't work with React.
Okay, you work with Node and you use import in Node.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. The thing is, both of them work fine. But it depends on like your setup or your structure. Okay, so it depends on your setup or your structure. So when you're using import, the way you set it up is different from the way you set it up in Node. So when you use const, okay. So for most I would say most, okay. I would say generally, there are certain developments, okay. There are certain developments in the backend, okay, server-side development with Node.js that import statement in some cases doesn't work well with them, okay. So for most of, if you check most developments, you will see that you see more of const, okay. You see more of const as and const is not it's not an ES5, it's an ES6 development, okay. So when you use import statement, yes is also part of ES6, ES7 introduction, but either of them you use, both of them work fine. It's just that at some point you would find maybe like if you're working with some, you would see cases where they'll be asking you to use the new syntax. Okay, so it's good to know both of them. But for the purpose of this class or this training, we'll be using more of const. Okay, it's more of when you're working with React that you find people using import statement because of the way the setup is. Okay, so either of them works fine. Okay, either of them works fine. There's no challenge.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I read that. So we can continue. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, so yeah, someone saying something.
Yeah, I'm speaking. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go on, please.
Yeah, I just want to quickly add to that, right? So ECMAScript 6 is like the if I'm not mistaken, the latest JavaScript syntax, right? And then
there's ECMAScript 7 actually, but like it's not yet widespread. Okay, so I was just as you're saying, it's ECMAScript 6 is like it is the one that's widespread. Okay, so it's the one that's still like fully stable and available for use. Okay.
Yeah. So what I want to point out to Solomon is that while all of that can work, but the issue now is that on some platforms we'll have where there are some compatibility issues like with ECMAScript 6.
Yeah.
Not everything to integrate that, right? So you would find that even projects that use ECMAScript as their style or writing JavaScript, they still use a package like Babel to compile to a more stable version of JavaScript so that you can have a wider range of. So while import statements and const are not all that different from each other, it's still advisable you use const, which has more compatibility across platforms.
Okay. Thanks very much, Prosper, for that. Yeah. So just as you said, that's exactly how it is. So it's talking about like compatibility. As a matter of fact, TypeScript compiles down, or is it down to ECMAScript 3. Okay, so that it can be available on the functionalities that you are trying to implement can be available on every browser. So you can imagine, that what you spend your time, developing and using let cons and everything, by the time you read the code that has been, compiled by transcript or transpiled down, you will see that most of it will still be in the var. So it's all about compatibility. So there are certain things that when they come, there's a version that is the long-term support or stable version. You want to use that more, and then there's the part that might not be readily available. So I've tried using reports. It works fine in some cases, works fine. Then some other cases it doesn't work. So even by experience, I just decided, okay, yes, it's good to work with consta until you find such a project that specifies or you need it. Okay, so that's a very nice question. Thank you very much for that. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's go straight into the business. So if you've gone through the material resources that I made available, you'll be able to access them now. So just click the link, go through the material resources I made available. You'll be able to see, you'll be able to see the file. I have a file folder here in week 1, and it says here some inbuilt node functions. And if I remember correctly, okay, I was trying to talk about Nodemon. Okay, I was trying to talk about Nodemon and what you could use Nodemon for. Okay, so for me, I have Nodemon installed globally on my system because I want to be able to use it to do certain things. So let me go over to what you can use Nodemon for. Now, when you have your regular node, your node index, okay, I'm not in that file. Let me cd into it. Week, okay, cd into week 1. Okay. Now, when you have your regular file, you see here that it runs and stops. But if you have Nodemon, okay, you use Nodemon now instead of node as your keyword. What it does is it's going to continue watching. Okay, so say you see it ran, it get the result, and it says here it's waiting for changes before it starts. Okay, so if I was to make some change here, for instance, okay, so if I was to make some change and say hello one more time, okay, let's say hello. So if I say hello one more time, you will see here that it gives me the result and it's still waiting. So if I was to duplicate this now, you see for certain applications, when you're working, you want to keep this running. Okay, so you want to keep this running so that you'll be able to see, just in case you're not familiar with that. So that's that. Then you can kill the application by using Control and C. Okay, so Control and C if you're using a Windows or a Mac. Control, you also have Control on your Mac, so whichever one you're using. Excuse me. Control and C to close the application. So here we just want to look at some built-in functions. Okay, some built-in functions that come with Node, the Node library. Okay, so the Node JavaScript library, and just see, okay, how we could use them. So I want to cd into this application. Okay, yeah. So I'm on the cd into this, and with this, I want to start with, okay, so here we have basically the file system here. And this file, in this file system here, is a simple file system. What you can do with it is of a file or application. Okay, you can change the name of the file. Okay, sorry. You can change the name using the file system. So here, this file system here it's a module that comes with the Node library. Okay, so it comes with the Node JavaScript library, so you don't have to install file system. So here we have the const fs, and we've imported it or required it. I believe it's an intermediate class. You're familiar with this. And then here, it's just to say this is a sample. Okay, so here I have an old name of file, and we want it to be renamed from this to a new name. Okay, so this here is the function. So there are different functions that are available on the file system. So basically what I've just done here is just pick out the object. So we are going to be looking deeply next week into object-oriented programming. The thing is, as I looking at all these different things here, I'm feeling somehow like it just looks like, okay, yes, we did copy and paste. For I want you to focus today on looking at these concepts, what we can do, and then do some tasks. And then next week, we'll look into explaining. Subsequently, we then will start building codes, okay, codes that we are going to use and tasks. So at that point, we'll deal with a whole lot of tasks. Okay, so here, this file, this function here is taking in 3 parameters. So here we have the parameter, which is the old name we have, and then the new name we want to change it to, and then the function. So based on this old name, it's going to check. Okay, so based on the old name, it's going to check for file with that name, and then it's going to try to create, rather rename it. And the first thing it will do is it's going to check if there's an error. So for example, an error will be that the file is not available, there's no such file. And then if there's no error, okay, then it's going to go on to run this. So let me do this using Node, just Node, and this should be 01. This should be 001. Okay, so this is 001. Excuse me. Okay, so this is 001. And at this point here, you can see here the error. Okay, so the error that is coming here is because there is no file available. So what I'm pointing out here is this is an error first approach. So it first checks if there's an error, and if there's no error, it runs it. But if there's an error, then you should stop. You shouldn't have to run the code. So here, what we will just be doing is we just I just want to create a file in that name. Okay, so aaa.txt, and no content for now. And let me run this. So this is the file aaa.txt, and at this point here, if I do this, you notice that the file has been renamed from aaa to bbb.txt. So here it gives me the return. The file aaa has been renamed as bbb.txt. So there are a whole lot of methods here. I'm not going to go into all of them. You'll be able to see them on the file, practice with them. And if you notice, basically what it has done is it's renamed the file, and the file is no longer existent as aa.txt. So the question here is why? Why do we have these functions? So generally on a browser, there are certain informations that are not safe to be transported, okay, over the protocol on browser. There are certain informations that are not safe. There are certain things that you don't want to happen by visiting a site. So just imagine, for example, now I was to visit a site, and just by entering the site gains access to my computer's, my operating system file system, okay, and then can do anything. That's hacking, okay? So generally, websites are meant to not, the JavaScript codes that are allowed on the front end, by standard, okay, by standard of www, which is the protocol there, is that you should not have your JavaScript front end or your client framework be able to do some of these certain functions. So things like file system, things like being able to modify all of these structures and this are things you don't want. That is why when you see maybe like people whose systems were corrupted, is because they downloaded a file and then tried to open it. So that file now is then on the system, but on the site, clicking a link does not automatically give you access. Okay, so the back end is what is then used to perform these functions or this extra functionalities and all this stuff and everything. Okay, so that is one of the functions or functionalities that you see here. Now, I'm going to show you an example of an API I worked on. So I'm going to show you an example of an API I worked on, and it's just a simple API, more of not anything very serious, for example. Now, one of the key aspects or takeaway that I mentioned when we talked about REST is talking about. So here we have like the back end of this API, which is accessible here on this route, and certain functions or functionalities that should be made available. So for instance, now, what you have when you access your browser, the browser can only do this part here, can only do a GET request, okay? You can only do a GET request. Your browser cannot do a POST request. So since browsers cannot do POST requests, you then need your API to be able to put in those functionalities that you want. So I want to do a GET request, for instance, now to this API now. And here I've installed a parser to change this, to make this legible. So here in this API here, I have like a list of certain information or jobs that are like provided in descriptions. So this is more of a JSON format. Okay, so I'll explain JSON later if you don't know that, but I expect that most of us will know that on this level. So here now, this information that is here, it's available, it's accessible. And while the browser can only do a GET request, we want to be able to do certain requests like post. What if I want to post information? I want to post a new job or something. So to be able to do that, we need to then have a form. So on the front end, we usually have like forms on the front end. So let me go to this site. Okay. So on the front end, you can have forms, and forms have only post method by default. Okay. So forms have only post method by default. So let me just try to fetch a form, for instance, please. Okay. So okay. So let's say, like, for instance, now this is a form here now. This form by default only has post methods. So what you then want to be able to do is you want to see how that you can be able to allow certain operations like delete. So the delete route is not available. The put, which is to update, is not available. But these are things that you want to be able to test. So we then have the Postman. So I'm going to go into Postman. You can access Postman by going to postman.com. Okay, so okay, so if you go to postman.com, you can access it directly from the web. So you can either decide to sign up for free. You can decide to download. Okay, so you can decide to download it, but I usually advise that you download it so you can work with it offline. So I already have Postman installed on my system, and while on one hand you wouldn't need to sign in, I prefer to sign in so that when you create like an API documentation, you can always be able to access it or see what you've worked on. Okay, so getting started with Postman, what are the operations that you can do in Postman? Different requests that you can access. You can access GET request, POST request, PUT request, and the delete request, which are the key for methods. Okay, so get, post, put, and delete. Then you have other methods like patch and all these other methods. And based on what we've seen from REST API, these are the key 1, 2, put, and delete. These are the key requests. So one of the things we look at here is we have 2 aspects of information that we could get. So we could get information from the body and we could get information from the head. So as we go further, I will be able to show you how you can get information from form data, run everything. So as we go further, we'll be able to see this in practical. So let me demonstrate, for example, the get request and how it's run. So I just want to go to Delta job ng that local, okay, local that like right.com, or I think I missed a letter. Let me just copy it from the browser. Okay, let me just copy it from the browser. I think I missed something out there. All right, okay, it's .com, not .app, Heroku app. Yeah, okay, so just copy and paste. All right, so here in this place, as I was explaining, okay, so I was explaining, when working with REST API, basically the back end has been completely separated in the sense that here I can get all the basic data and information, and this is gotten from a database on MongoDB, okay? So here, this information and everything here is all available here, and it lists the different jobs that you can get. Now, when working here, you will notice I use jobs. So I didn't use like terminologies that are not easy to pick, and that's trying to conform to this. Then here, I also want to pick the ID here for the first job here. So if I pick this ID and search here, now this should present just only one job. So this here is an example of like keying, okay, keying to the REST standard, where you have that what you want to do should be put together in a way that is unique, okay? So if I was to bring this here now, remove this here and get that for another job, I should be able to get like something unique, something that is different. So at every point in time, that path will always give me the result that I'm looking for. Now, for a post request, the post request is dealing with you sending information. Okay, so let's say, for instance, now I was to send information. I don't have any information to send here, except I check my collections. Okay, so here now, for a post request, let's just look at some of the request examples that we could have here. So this is just like demo site, it's something I could show you. So here I could decide to get all jobs. So you see this is a get request. If I want to get a specific job, it's a get request. If I want to search for like a job post, okay, by using a location, it's a get request. Now that you want to send information, so somebody is applying for a job now, you want to post that job from the client now, posting all the information of the person now to the server. Now that is a post request. Now you can see a put request here used for updating. So to update a job post. And then, yes, if I want to delete a job post, here we're using the delete. So based on the different standards as we saw in REST, that is how, so based on the different standards we saw in REST, that is how like we are trying to conform to the methods that are available. So when we get to working with, APIs, building APIs, we'll be able to see like the different setups that we have there. So let's go back to VS Code as at this point. I'll take questions. If anybody has any questions thus far, I'll take them. Okay, so if you have a question, you can raise your hand so that you can be unmuted. Remember to go through these different setups that are here. as much as possible, practice with them. Even if you're not going to use a whole bunch of them, there are lots that we are going to use by the time we move into some of the applications that we will be building in the course of this program. Okay, so I'll take questions. If you have a question, you could raise your hand so I can call on you.
Go ahead, Solomon.
Okay, sorry, I don't know if I'm being too forward on my questions and not too much, but I just, with the last explanation, our trainer made that time, I just want to be clear. I've been hearing the word endpoints from API calls. So I just want to know, from the example you gave just now, the jobs, is it the endpoint or the ID is the endpoint? Because the job lists a whole lot of the jobs,
Okay.
while the ID lists a particular job. So I want to know which one is the endpoint in both during API calls.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the endpoint basically is like this whole URL. Okay, the endpoint is the whole URL. Now when you look at the word URL or URI, the URI is the Uniform Resource Identifier. Okay, so this basically is all the part of the link that you need to be able to get that resource. So all of this resource, whatever it is, no matter how much it is accessible when you are able to get to this URI. Okay, so this URI, the Uniform Resource Identifier, is the link, okay, or the point you get to that contains all of these resources. So this whole path from start to finish is the endpoint, okay? Okay,
I get that. Thank you very much.
Any other question? Yeah, you're welcome. Any other question? Okay. Okay, I'm seeing question. Says okay, someone is asking how to get the folders. Okay, so I shared the link. If you go to the Slack workspace, you will see the link to the folder. So the link there has inbuilt, okay, those links there are inbuilt functions. So there are certain things that are already inbuilt into Node. We don't need to go over. We will need to like have to start importing or using a third-party package to do that. Those links are already inbuilt. However, if a third package will simplify the process, yes, you can go through that. Okay, so any other question? Solomon, I think you can put your hands down if you already asked the question. Okay, any other question?
Yeah, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Must protect.
Yeah, okay. So my question is like in REST APIs, do we use beyond the 5 type of request in the Postman, the get, post, put and patch, I think? Do we use beyond those 4?
Okay, it's not like there's a limitation. Okay, it's not like there's a limitation to what exactly you use, but most, like if you saw on Postman, you saw that there were more than those 4 that were there. But for basic operations that we have, you don't need to use more than the 4. Okay, so for basic operations that you have, as a matter of fact, even on the front end, for those who work on the front end, when using things like the built-in fetch, okay, the built-in fetch just has few operations, so your gets and post and all that. Okay, so it's only when you are using maybe like third parties like Axios and stuff that you have more functionalities there. So most of your operations you only need the 4 of them. If it's something you want to update, use your put. If it's something you want to delete, if it's something you want to like create, like a new thing you want to create, then if it's something that you want to just get information. So those 4 basic blocks or basic methods, most of the operations that you have to do with your site are all limited to that. Okay, so you won't need to do more than that. Yes, any other question, please? Any other question, please? Okay, so there's something I wanted to show you. There's something I wanted to show you by way of answering some of the questions. So let me go back to, we should be rounding up now. So let me go back to, okay, so let me go back to sharing my screen. Okay, so, okay. All right. Okay, so here, this basically is using Express. This basically is using Express. And in this point here, we have a get function. And this get function is just rendering this information. So it's sending this information to the screen. Now, what I want to show you here is, let me first of all run this. So let me see, where am I? Okay, so let me see the outs. Okay, so this is week 1. Okay, so it's week 1. Okay, so let me run this. So node hello world. Okay. Okay. Okay, so it says this is already in use. So I'm already running this in another port. Okay, so basically when we start working, we'll be seeing some of these errors, and good thing is we'll be seeing quick solutions to how to know what an error is saying. Okay, so read error stack, and from there be able to know how to solve a problem. Okay, so that basically rendered hello world. Okay, and I want to show you on Postman API. Okay, so on Postman localhost, there's something I want to show you here. Okay, so here you see here, sorry, I wanted to just close that. Okay, so so here you see that it's showing you hello world for a get request. Now, if I was to erroneously, if I was not like a programmer who was aware of what I was doing, and I have to stop this now because I made changes here. Okay, so I made changes here, and since I'm using Node, it's not going to run those changes. So let me just use Node hello world. Okay, so now this is running here. Now, if I I changed it to post request, so currently it's not available here. Now, if I went here and I went to post request and I did send on a post request, it would still run, but it is not the standard. Okay, it will still run, and it is not the standard. And if you look on the browser, like I told you, the browser can only do a get request. If I do that, you see it cannot get. So your browser does only get requests. So these are some of the reasons why we have to conform to some of these standards. Okay, so some of these standards are because these methods are set up for the different systems that are already using them. So if someone, for example, now is a Vest developer and the person wants to work with your API, the person is expecting that this should be a GET request, since all you are just doing is getting information and rendering it. So it's expecting that this should be a GET request. Okay, so apart from us doing this because we know we shouldn't go out of our way to, okay, because this thing sounds like a patchwork, let me use patch. No, let's use the conformable standard. So we're conforming to a standard so that our code internationally is, of international standard. So that's just another explanation I need to say. So this should be a GET request because it is not sending in information through the body or any of these other forms. So that brings us to the end of today's class. So like I showed you here, this information that you see here coming on this side, all this information here, this and all this information here, this is from the back end, and the back end can perform like so many different logical functionalities. But here you see that, okay, this information was used to render, this. So we picked out the part that we need, and we used it in rendering this information. So this is how concerns are separated. So REST API says you are separating the concerns. The front end should be able to do all the things it needs to do on its own, and where it needs your resources, you should provide an endpoint that it can reach to get this information. So that's that on REST API. This is basically an introductory class, and please try to go through the materials. And the purpose for introducing all these different concepts is just to assume that, if we don't know it, we should get to know it well, the why of what we do, rather than just, I know how to do it, but the why. So in case you are faced in an interview, or in case you are to choose between multiple options, then you should know why. You should understand the use cases for the different types of uses, and based on that, if you are even faced with an employer or maybe a developer or someone else who says this is what we want to use, and you have to advise them on why your own assessment of it is better, then you should have a good informed explanation for what it is that you do. So that brings us to the end of today's class. I will take one last question if there's any. Then we'll call it a day for today. Any last questions? Any last questions? Okay, so ahead of next week's class, we are going to be moving into object-oriented programming. Okay, so this first 3 weeks by design, we'll be looking deeply into understanding the concepts. So it's not about code. So this first week, we're going to be moving into object-oriented programming next week. So please do yourself a favor, go ahead, read ahead. So if you're faced with a challenge in understanding the concept, you can then bring it up next week. But remember, Nodemon is an island. It's an embodiment of knowledge. So I'm not saying that we have exactly all the answers to your questions, but like for the general body of knowledge that you should know, we will explain those concepts next week. So we're looking next week into object-oriented programming, understanding the key principles of object programming. So we look at principles as inheritance, encapsulation, and all those key principles of object programming. Okay, so that will be that, and that will be the end of today's class. So once again, thank you very much for your time, and I hope to see you guys once again next week. You can reach me on Slack channel at Aerosoft, and you can also reach Prosper at Prosper.js. We will be willing to give you any form of assistance. Remember to go through the files that are in the folder, and as much as possible, practice all of them. Read all of them. So I put comments there. So that you don't just see the file, you'll be able to see, okay, this is what this does, this is why it does this. Okay, so I put comments in those files. So you should be able to go through all of them, test them, see how they run through, how they work and everything. And at every point in time, if you need any clarity on any one of them, you could also reach out to us. So that will be that. Thank you so much for your time. And thanks to KodeCamp for giving this opportunity to each and everyone. So please, if you have any